right, and I think we are live. Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Crypto Analyst here, and I hope all of you guys are having a good morning, evening, wherever you guys are from, and welcome back to another crypto, or more so of a live stream of crypto and Bitcoin and altcoin technical analysis. I'm just making sure we are indeed live, and we are. Awesome. So we're good to go, guys. Welcome back to another episode, another weekly episode of the Crypto Analyst live stream, where we go over Bitcoin, we go over altcoins, we talk about what's happening right now, and of course, you guys, the audience, get to ask questions about, really my thoughts on this matter and where I believe everything is happening and where everything is going. So one of the most popular topics that, of course, everybody wants to know is Bitcoin and where I believe that is going, and so I want to kind of explain my thoughts on this, and more so on the lower, the mid, and the long-term time scales, because I think that those are the most popular. So I'll be breaking down all of those and kind of explaining my thoughts on Bitcoin and this current price action, because there was definitely people that were asking me today about where I believe this guy was going to go. So I do want to give people an opportunity to join in. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the notification goes out to all the subscribers and everyone into the Discord before we get really too deep into this. So just give me one moment and we'll be heading out from here. If you guys can hear me all right, just go ahead and give me a thumbs up in chat, and should be good to go pretty soon here. I didn't get the, that didn't work. I didn't get the start going quite on time tonight. I was a little bit behind. I was having trouble with my car, and so we are a couple of minutes late for the live stream, but we are still starting at roughly 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now that that is sent out, let me go ahead and make sure that I actually get this on one more, and then we should be good to go. Welcome to everyone who's just now joining in. We're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin today because there are a couple formations actually forming. We have this falling channel, we have this descending triangle, and of course we have this like little bear flag and possibly a potential rejection coming from this 50 EMA. It's going to be one of those things that we're going to have to watch closely, but that is the idea. All right. Sorry guys, just have to reply to this. So now we are good to go. Chat is up and we're good. So I think we've probably left about enough time for people to get in here. So let's go ahead and start explaining what's happening on Bitcoin. More people joined, and it'll kind of just be going with the flow from there. There's really not too much to kind of start off or announce. There's not really any announcements that are going to be going forward over here. It's just going to be one of those things where we're kind of just jumping right into the live stream tonight. Not necessarily because I'm in a rush, but more so just because of the fact that there's not anything to really precurse this. Usually I do news or announcements or something, but in this case, there's really not much else to talk about besides Bitcoin itself, and I think this is going to be the most important thing to talk about. So jumping right into Bitcoin here, what we can see is that this was obviously a bear flag forming with this bearish pennant, and so from this bearish pennant, it broke down, which was the idea. Now this was fairly obvious to me between the rejections from the lower swing highs and the rejections from the EMAs, as well as this being a breakdown, then the pennant forming. I think all of this was kind of just telling us that this was going to move bearish. And so what it's done is it's done exactly that. And so since it's had this breakdown over here, it's came back and it wants to retest this 200 EMA. Now, something to take note of is that this has been used as resistance really ever since it kind of broke it over in here. So the way that these EMAs work, and I know I've explained this a lot, but if it is below it, it's going to be using it, or if it's below it, it's going to be using it as resistance, as we've seen in here, and even over in here. And if it's above it, it's actually going to be using it as support, like we've seen over over here in these areas. I would say the most so over in here. And the way that I'm playing this now and that I'm betting is that these EMAs are going to stay resistance until being broken, and that for the duration of this, I'm still seeing this more so as a bear flag more so than anything else. Now, could this be contradicted? The answer is absolutely yes, but I want to go ahead and draw up some I want to go ahead and draw up a parallel channel over here to get your guys' view and see how you guys see this really through my eyes. So the way that I'm drawing this up is that we have this breakdown over here being an obvious bear pull in my opinion. So this, this breakdown being the bear pull, and then of course this parallel channel that we're getting over in here, this rising channel, is going to be the bear flag. So it's going to be a bear flag, bear pull combination, or let me rephrase that, a bear pull, bear flag combination over here, and what most likely, in my opinion, this will, eventually break down. Now, if we zoom out and we look at this on the macro trend, what we can see is that pretty obviously, we have two things forming, as I've already mentioned. The first being this descending triangle inside of this falling wedge, or not falling wedge, inside of this falling channel, but the second being the falling channel itself. Now, we've talked about that for every video for a while now. Ken, what's up? He says, new weekly and monthly candle. Yes, sir, we get that today. So this is going to kind of be, I guess, setting the pace for the rest of the month. But I would be very, very careful in here that this doesn't turn into another bull trap scenario. And I say bull trap because people are still incredibly bullish, and I don't blame them because of the macro. But you have to be bullish, especially if you're leverage trading. You have to be careful about where you are bullish, because even though you could be right in theory, you could hit your liquidation price before you get to that, that ultimate breakout. And so what I'm seeing over in here is, of course, this descending triangle. Now, let's go ahead and talk about this. Now, this is a very unique concept because I actually had a friend ask me, he goes, well, hey, on Bitcoin right now, do you think that it's this falling channel that you've been talking about, or do you think it's this descending triangle, that we've also talked about? And my answer to him was actually it's going to be both. It's actually going to be a descending triangle inside of a falling channel. Now, this is unique. You see this happen a decent amount in technical analysis, but not necessarily two formations that are as big as this right inside of each other, because this is a pretty large size descending triangle, not as big as the one that we saw over here in 2018, but this is still a pretty large one in and of itself, because we're going all the way back from like June of this year all the way up to now September, which is, about it's about 3 months. So you have June, July, August. So about 3 month long descending triangle, as opposed to the previous one that was about a year. But even inside of this descending triangle, one can see that other formations are forming inside of it. And so the same concept applies as to when we're talking about a descending triangle inside of a falling channel. Now, the reason that these two actually work so well together is because if this wants to break down, it would pretty much break down right to the bottom of this channel and then bounce. So it'd be like a bearishly bullish case scenario, if that makes any sense, or a bullishly bearish case scenario, vice versa. And the way that that would actually play out is that if it were to, respect this, one of two things can happen from here. So what it can do from here is that we've very clearly just bounced off the bottom of this descending triangle once again. It's a great breakdown all the way down to, what was this? A low of about $9,280. Bounce right off of this area and then start coming up. So there's really only two ways that I see this playing out in my head. One is that this is a very clear bear pull, bear flag scenario, and that from here, I don't know what happened, and that from here, this guy is just going to break this descending triangle and fall down to support. Now, the second case scenario that can actually happen is that this bounced off of the bottom of the descending triangle for the, the third or fourth time, and that this is going to go back up towards resistance, see a rejection, and then come back down. I think ultimately this is going to have to come back down a little bit further, in my opinion, before it goes anywhere. A lot of people want to see these upper level prices get hit again, and I understand that, and I do too. However, I just think that from a technical analysis standpoint, this is a whole lot more logical to me that this either bear flags like it is and then breaks down, or it bounces off this point, it gets rejected from upper overbearing resistance, then sees rejection, and then bounces from there. So something a little bit like that. So let's go ahead and draw up these. So I think that it could either do, or maybe even bear flag drop out of this and bounce off, and then reject. Or it just straight goes up from here. Comes down. Ultimately, they're pretty similar. The only difference in this is that one's going to go up to upper overbearing resistance before seeing rejection, and this one's just going to see rejection a little bit early. So those are pretty much the two possibilities I see happening over here. I don't necessarily see it breaking out right now. I understand the argument as to a lot of people saying as to why it should be breaking out now, because if you're looking at this like a parallel channel, you're going to be, noticing this kind of like heart line that it has inside of here. I mean, we can probably draw one up because we have plenty of time. But basically, the heart line is like the middle of the channel, and it's the same concept of resistance and support. If it's below it, it's going to be resistance, and if it's above it, it's going to be support. That's why you can kind of tell that the middle of this channel over here, you can even just call this a trend line if you don't even want to call it the heart line. But basically, the way that this is going to work and play out as a heart line, so to say, or as a trend line, is you're going to have it seeing rejection until it's now broken above. It broke above this, so you're not going to have any of the rejections in here. Again, rejection right here, rejection right here, rejection right here. You know, just plenty of rejections in this area. Another one right in here. And then as soon as it kind of broke above this, you start seeing this area start getting used as support instead. Excuse me, I'm choking. Instead of as resistance. And one could be arguing that it's bounced off of the heart line once, it's going to bounce off it twice, and then it could in theory break out from here. And I totally understand that, but again, you know, we'll see. It looks like support should be getting exhausted from here. But moving on, guys, I just wanted to explain. Let me kind of reiterate that because I feel like I'm kind of all over the place tonight. I feel like I'm a little bit out of the loop. Basically, to reiterate this and to summarize it in simple words, I see Bitcoin really only having 3 possible scenarios with 2 likely scenarios. So let's talk about that real fast. So the 2 likely scenarios are the ones that I just kind of emphasized. First likely scenario is bear flag, drop out of here, breaks the descending triangle, and then bounces off this range and up like this. The second likely scenario is that it bounced off of this heart line or something, you know, the heart line and the bottom of this descending triangle support. It's going to go up to resistance before seeing rejection, breakdown, and then break out. Those are the 2 likely scenarios. The third possible scenario is to argue that it bounced off of this. That's really bad. It bounced off of this heart line, and then now that it's bounced off this heart line, it's going for the breakout, and, you know, this was the bounce, you know, and then now it's going up from here. It's breaking out of this giant bull flag scenario that we talked about on Bitcoin, right? Giant. I think I just messed this up. Giant bull flag scenario possibility for Bitcoin, giant bull flag, or even like this, giant bull flag, giant bull pull, and then giant bull flag, and then we're just waiting for the breakout from here. So I do believe that the ultimate breakout is coming from outside of this entire falling channel. I just think that it's going to be one of those things that's going to take a lot more time than people want it to. We talked about how this could take till the end of the year, and it's still very possible that that could be the scenario. You could not, you could be seeing a breakout in Bitcoin in like sometime in October, and that is kind of stressful for a lot of people. That could be like a month, 2 months away. But I think in the ultimate, it's going to be worth it. And, you know, not that we have, I mean, I say that, not that we really have any control or effect over it, but based upon technical analysis, I'm pretty confident in saying that this guy's going to want to retest some lower angles over here. I just think that the upper rejections from resistance, as well as this descending triangle and the rejection from the EMAs, are all kind of telling me that, you know, this wants to go down to a further price before rallying to the upside. And that's perfectly okay, especially in a situation like this. If this was to come all the way down to like the 6.5 or the 7K range, it wouldn't be a horribly bearish thing. And I think I need to emphasize that because sometimes every time I say the word that something's bearish or that it's going to break down or something like that, people get really offended because they're like, well, dude, you're just spreading FUD and it's anti-crypto. And I don't really view it as that. I view it as, no, this is still a very, very good thing because this is a necessary breakdown for the larger breakout scenario for Bitcoin. If it wants a nice, healthy bounce and breakout, I think ideally it would want to bounce off of this support, you know, and that's just my opinion, I guess. If it wants, because I think the best way to break out is to respect technical analysis, because that's what most modern markets do. Moving this over to the 1-day candle, I want to talk about it's the wrong tool. I want to talk about the 50 EMA over in here because this is something that we talked about. And pardon these arrows because they're meant for the 4-hour time scale, but we still have the 50 EMA up on the 1-day time scale up around $10,250. Now, you guys are probably thinking that sounds familiar because it's very similar to the 200 EMA on the 4-hour chart. You know, they're about $50 to $40 apart from each other. They're basically almost in the same spot, you know, apart from like $40. Sorry guys, I gotta put my phone on Do Not Disturb or else it's gonna keep buzzing. But, and where were we? Moving back to the 1-day time scale, guys, this is again one of those things that I want to highlight. Not to say that it was, you know, brutally. Actually, you know, I will say it was. It was a very, very strong support for Bitcoin on the way up over here. I mean, we can see that ever since it broke above this this 50 EMA, I mean, we can see that all in here, resistance, still resistance until it broke out and then retested it. Now this is the break in the hook, and then this was the go. You can see that it hooked on here. It was bouncing off of here. What was previously resistance is now turning support, and then it stayed support and it stayed support until it was broken. Now what we've actually seen over on the 1 day, what is this, 50 EMA, we saw that now that it has actually fallen back below it, it's now using it as rejection. And we can see this from over here because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 candles all getting rejected from this point. It broke above it, had one candle, wasn't able to hold, broke back down, and since then you have another 1, 2, 3, 4, nearly 5 candles over here that are all seeing rejection on the daily chart. So now with this breakdown, I think that this is very possibly just another bear flag scenario, and what looks to be just a continuation in the downwards trend of Bitcoin in the short to midterm, but in the long term, obviously still an uptrend for the most part. Another very excuse me, little stutter. Another very possible situation is the bounce off the 200. I wouldn't really be counting on that. I think the 200 is more so of like a measuring tool rather than like a technical bounce area or a technical rejection area. Mike, welcome to the chat. He says, the fourth scenario, consolidate further sideways and break out at the end of October anticlimactically. That is another thing. In fact, we've actually seen that happen before on Bitcoin. So it wouldn't be too much of a surprise because so often we are looking at technical analysis in Bitcoin. And while it has been extremely reliable and good over the past couple of months, there have been a course and a period of time, and those of you guys who have been around the channel for a long time, you guys will remember that earlier in this year, or towards the end of last year, I forget what it was. I think it was more towards the end of last year. Technical analysis really wasn't meaning really much at all. I mean, we were looking at things like the MACD and the RSI and indicators and oscillators, and they just were not helpful in any way because we were thinking and we were looking at situations of what should happen, and then Bitcoin would just anticlimactically move sideways and then eventually break out or break down. More oftenly, it would break down. And so that's still another very, very possibility because just because Bitcoin is respecting the technical analysis right now, and it has been all over in here extremely well, doesn't mean it's guaranteed to continue respecting the TA in the future because, it's Bitcoin. So I think that is definitely a very good point, Mark, is because at any time, this guy could just say, you know what, I'm not feeling the TA anymore. And not literally, but it could, much like it's done in the past, it could just say, let's just consolidate over here, bore people out, and then hit like a quick spurt, who knows. Crypto G, welcome. Just like in June and July of 2016, yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. Although I'm gonna be honest, I don't particularly remember what the chart of 2016 looks like. Where are we? 2018. Does it go all the way back to 2016? Oh, it does. Let's go take a look. Oh, yeah, like this? Yeah. So, yeah, it's very possible. I think the situation's a little bit different. Oh, wait, no, that's the wrong area. My bad. Ah, I see what you're saying. So, basically, Mike's kind of comparing the two runs over here. Basically saying that we're in this phase right now, like we've already had this happen. Now we're in this consolidation phase where things were pretty volatile, but they're starting to slow down. And what he's saying is that we could just be entering into this sideways area over here of just consolidation boring people out. Now, keep in mind when that happened, this actually broke down before bouncing and then, of course, eventually recovering. What I think is a more probable situation is that this was I was going to argue that this was, kind of play devil's advocate here, argue that this was our 2017 run-up. This was the bear market. This was this consolidation market. And then we've started kind of taking off from here. But I don't know. Different times, different circumstances. We've gone over parabolic market cycles on this channel, and I've done videos about it, really comparing just how similar all the parabolic market cycles have been in Bitcoin. So I don't want to elaborate on that because I literally have done a full drawn-up video. Crypto G, welcome. So let's go ahead and continue over here. So what's happening on the indicators and oscillators of Bitcoin? Now, more specifically, you guys know I use the MACD and the RSI. Those are my two favorites. I feel like those are the two that I'm the best with, so I use them the most on here because I'm not going to use something that I feel like I'm ill-educated at, especially not for like educational content. So moving over here, there's really not much over here. There's really not much on the MACD. Just from looking at this, it looks like it's about to round off, which would lead me to be more inclined to be bearish. However, there is no official round off. Just from knowing what the MACD looks like and using it very oftenly, I would say that this is about to round off on the 4-hour, and it's going to start rounding down probably by tomorrow morning for me. It's going to start rounding down, and it's going to turn into bearish, which presents it with the opportunity, to be fair, to set up double bullish divergence. Oscillators aren't saying anything, in my opinion. Nothing at least worthwhile. Now, this, on the other hand, is actually pretty unique. So let's talk about this, because this is something that we haven't seen in a while on the MACD, but it's still extremely significant. So if you guys remember, one of my favorite, like what used to be one of my favorite trading tactics, Edward Park, hey, great to have you in here. Hey, what's up, Chauncey? Great to have you. What was I saying? I kind of lost my train of thought. So getting back into like one of my favorite trading tactics, this is kind of what I wanted to highlight over here, is this lower swing high on the 4-hour RSI of Bitcoin and what this means. Now, if you guys have been around, or if you guys have taken, and this is something I need to announce as well, if you guys have taken my technical analysis course, I actually talk about this. And I don't want to go too in-depth explaining it, because it's something that I talk about on the course kind of exclusively, but I guess I want to be fair to all the people who had to pay for it. But basically, what I'm looking at over here is a lower swing high so a lower swing high on the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin. And what this means is that there's lower levels of negative momentum coming into Bitcoin upon a swing low. So the fact that this is a lower swing or a higher swing low, I think I said lower swing high earlier, I'm sorry. The fact that this is a higher swing low on the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin on the RSI is telling me that there's lower levels of negative momentum upon each swing low over here. So the fact that this guy came down, bounced up, tried to retest this area, was not able to get lower, which is telling me that there's lower levels and that the bears are losing momentum essentially. Now, the times that we've seen this play out over here, let's go ahead and kind of rewind, because this is something I used so oftenly way back towards like the beginning of the year, and it worked out like a dime. So okay, well, we rewinded just a little bit too much. So let's highlight some of these, and again, I don't want to go too in depth on it because I explain it very deeply in the course, and I feel like it's not fair to the people who paid for it. But basically, as I'm looking at things like this is double bearish divergence. Over here, lower swing high, lower levels of positive momentum coming into this on a swing high. Of course, it tanks right afterwards. Another great example would be all in here. This is like a quadruple bullish divergence scenario. Consistently higher swing lows upon each attempt towards the downside. Over here, setting up quadruple or quintuple bullish divergence. Following this, a great breakout towards the upside. Same situation over here. Higher swing low, breakout, following this situation. Over here, I actually still have this one marked. I mean, you can use this just about for every sample that you guys find over here, continually bearish. I will say for these, though, when I'm using the RSI, especially for like a formula like this, I won't tell. It's when you're using the RSI, especially for a formula like this, it's not even like a formula. It's more like a strategy. I don't know why I said formula. But when you're using the RSI for something like this, I generally like to do this in more of an oversold and an overbought and an oversold territory. When you're doing this kind of in the median in here, anywhere in this purple, it becomes extremely risky and less reliable. So that's why all these examples that you guys are probably seeing me, let me go ahead and even get rid of these because I don't even want these to be in there. But all these examples that I'm giving you are going to be ones that are either in this oversold or this overbought territory. Again, over in here, lower levels of positive momentum upon a swing high. It came up, it had a great run, it retested this upper level, could not get higher, saw a lower swing high and then a tank. I mean, it's just one of those things. This is something that happens all the time on Bitcoin. It's just all the time. So now we could be arguing that this is, this was working our way into March and April over here. Why was this increasingly more bullish? Well, we're seeing consistently higher swing lows on this RSI, going from 19.28 to 23.8, all the way up to 25.2, then to 27, then to 28, then all the way up to 30, and then, just increasingly lower levels of negative momentum upon each test towards the downside. And if we go over to the corresponding candle chart of this, what we see is that, well, what was happening? Well, there actually was lower levels of negative momentum. We're seeing higher swing lows, and we're seeing a nice little uptrend, a nice little rounding bottom action on Bitcoin, and then this guy started taking off. And so when this is correlating with the RSI over here, it's something that I'm looking at. So I'm sorry, I don't want to go too in depth onto this, but it's a strategy that I have used a lot in my history over here and in my past, because it's treated me well. And I'm not saying it works every time, but like almost every time I've ever done it, it's never failed me. You can literally just highlight every time I see this over here, and it plays out pretty well. So, not guaranteeing that it works every time, but like 99% of the time that I've done it, if played correctly in like an overbought or oversold territory, I have profited from it. Anyway, big old rabbit trail. Back to Crypto G. Back to the technical analysis of Bitcoin itself. By the way, if you guys want to see more content like that, let me go ahead and pull up a chart. This is going to be like my little plug. I need to make a video announcing this because so many people were asking me to make a technical analysis course. And I actually went and I spent like months on this last year. I started in January of last year. I believe it was January in last year. And I finished the course this summer. And I got it live like a month or two ago. And it took me like 6 months to make. So I think it's an absolutely great course. I've gotten only positive feedback on it, but I am going to go ahead and throw up a link to this if I can. Jeez. But basically, I go through and I teach more technical analysis, stuff like that. So if that's something that interests you, by all means. I might actually... not be able to throw it up right now because it's not wanting to work for me, and I don't want to just sit here. All right, well, while that's aimlessly loading, let's go ahead and go back to Bitcoin. Hey, do you prefer the log chart over the linear? What exactly do you mean, Edward? Like... Oh, yeah, sorry, I'll let you go ahead and explain that before I just continually ask questions. If Chauncey is still in here, let me go ahead and explain this because I was explaining it earlier. But basically what I was saying is that it's possible to have a descending triangle inside of a falling channel. And the reason for that being is that we see this happen very often in technical analysis. I think a great example over in here was this recent pennant that we saw forming on Bitcoin. I think he means logarithmic. It's on the bottom right. There's a log bottom. Oh. Oops. I see what you're saying. I never like toggled this though, but I know what you mean. I think it's more preference than anything, but in my opinion, or for me personally, I do not like using log just because I feel like I'm more comfortable and confident without using log. I don't really think it means the world's difference, but like what changes over here? I guess some of my lines, because it kind of throws me off. I think the most important thing that when you're trading is that you're comfortable and confident. And those are the two things. If you can't be comfortable, then you can't be confident. And if you can't be confident, then you can't make effective trades. So when you're looking at this, it's kind of whatever floats your boat. And that's not the case for everything in trading, and more specifically in cryptocurrency. But I think that it's all about being what you're good at and knowing what you're good at and what you're comfortable and confident in, and then going from there. So if this is like what you prefer and what you like, then by all means, like if that's what you're accustomed to. I never grew up. I say grew up. I never like learned when I was learning and doing this actively. I was never using log. It's not to say that it's bad. It's just, it's not something that I use. So moving back to Bitcoin over here, guys. Basically, what I was talking about, Chauncey, is the fact that this can be a pennant, and that formations can happen inside of each other. This one more specifically, we had this pennant or this bear flag forming inside of Bitcoin. I can go ahead and get rid of this death cross as well, because we already highlighted that. But actually, let's keep that in there. But what we saw is this bear flag forming on Bitcoin, or this pennant or symmetrical triangle. We saw this breakdown and then this pennant forming, but this was still inside of this giant channel, or even as inside of this descending triangle. Now, even over in here, we have had other formations happening, but it's possible to have formations happen inside of each other. Of course, this was bearish. It did break down, and it bounced right off of support. Former resistance, now support. So with this, I don't think that this situation is any different. We've seen this happen, especially over in 2018, because this was like the largest descending triangle that Bitcoin's ever had. It was probably the largest formation that Bitcoin's ever had, hence why the move was so big. So with this happening, I don't see this as any different. This is just a giant formation, this one only being about a 3-month descending triangle and about a 3-month falling wedge, or not falling wedge, a 3-month falling channel in addition to that. So I think the most likely outcome over here is what I was saying earlier, is that it either breaks down from this bear flag, kind of breaks this, or that it actually wants to go back up towards upper resistance before seeing a rejection and then bouncing. My ideal area is towards the bottom of this falling channel. I think that it would make sense if it wants to touch it. I am getting a little bit hesitant because I don't like to see these gaps. This is a very big gap in here. And so if this wants to retest the channel, it would have to do it very fast to still look kind of clean. And if it came down that fast, again, that would make me nervous as well. The most likely outcomes that I see it happening from here are either it retests this area before breaking down, it just breaks down from here, or it's very possible that one could be arguing that it bounced off of the heart line twice, and thus it's ready to break out. I'm personally believing that it wants to break down rather than break out. We'll have to see what it does around the 50 in the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time scale. But until those are broken, I'm going to continually be bearish because they are resistance and they have been a rejection point for Bitcoin pretty consistently as of lately. Sorry, I thought I was behind on chat. So I think hopefully that's like a good explanation, is that charts and patterns and formations can happen inside of each other. And it's something that we see not like every day, but it's something that we do see in technical analysis, and the most recent one being over in here. So I think that with this happening, I think that the descending triangle is going to be taking precedent over everything else. And then, not that it's taking precedent over the falling channel, but just because it's inside the falling channel, I think that it's, excuse me, I think that it's likely that it breaks down to the bottom of the falling channel and then uses the bottom as support before a breakout. So I think right now the name of the game is the descending triangle is what we're all primarily worried about, because of the fact that this is the imminent threat. Like, why worry about this when we have this up in here? So there's no reason to really worry about this yet until we deal with this current problem. It's like the same idea. Like, why worry about this whole giant trend when we had this pennant forming in here, right? We worry about this and where this is going to go, and then we worry about the thing after. So after we identify where we think this is going to go, then we had the idea of, oh, well, this is the bear flag, this is probably going to come back down towards support, which is exactly what we did. And so then the idea was, well, now that it bounced off of support, if it doesn't hold support, it's coming down. If it doesn't, it's going to retest the EMAs, and then if it breaks that, then it's going to retest the top. It's really about just breaking this down and taking it one step at a time, rather than trying to skip steps, because I think too many people arguably just want to keep continually skipping steps in technical analysis to like cut the time or like make these crazy like long-term predictions, when it's really not like that. It's about seeing all the different outcomes and then taking it one step at a time, saying, all right, well, this is the most important priority, and then prioritizing this and saying, okay, well, this first and then this second, and then we can either say this or this, being like third. But yes, back to the 1 week and the 1 month, because we now have new candles that are getting printed. They haven't really gone anywhere because they literally just opened up today. But it will be unique to it'll be cool to see how this plays out from here and where these candles go. They just opened a couple of hours ago. So, time will tell. This is our weekly candle and our monthly candle. No, wait, the monthly candle hasn't opened yet. Or did it open like a week ago? Or should it open soon? I'm not actually entirely sure when the monthly candle opens. The September candle's already open, so. So like, look at this from like a 3-day chart. Is it time a flash crash? Is that how they fix these type of charts? I mean, well, it depends like what you mean by flash crash. So like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking like 1K, 7K, like 9K? Like, how big of a crash are we talking when we say flash crash? Let's move this back to the 1-day chart. We pretty much summed up like a lot of the things that we need to on Bitcoin. Was this working over here, by the way? No, it's not. Oh, it did work. Maybe? Possibly. Maybe not. I need to get this figured out. Basically, guys, I'll make a separate video for the course thing. I was going to post that in here, but it's not wanting to work with me right now. So I'll focus on that later, and I'll make a separate video on the course announcing that it's out for those of you guys who are interested. I've given a couple away for free, and I might do another free giveaway for it for whenever I do that video. I kind of actually like that. 9K to 8.7-ish. So $9K, 8.7. The only problem I have with that is that, like, why would it really kind of stop? I kind of understand this is the previous swing high area, but like, I don't think that if it breaks this descending triangle, I don't really see why it would stop until the bottom of the trend line, or to the least the 50% retracement mark, right? The 0.5 fib. The reason being is that we talked about why this is such an established trend line over in here. Jeez, I think I have hiccups. Right? This guy came up and for the first time really saw rejection. It came over here, saw rejection, came back down, saw rejection again, came up, kind of saw rejection. I don't know if you can really label this. You could argue that this is a rejection from the same area. Not very, not nearly as close as these two touch points, but, another rejection point over here came down, broke above this point, and then started using it as support. So former resistance now turned support, then stayed support, and then stayed support again, and then stayed support again. I think that this would be a pretty big thing, in that if this is enough to break, if this support line is enough to break, I don't think it's only going to fall $200 to $300 towards the downside, right? If this big of a support line is going to break, I don't think it's just going to go boop and then like right back up. I mean, it would be a huge fake out in my opinion if that was to happen. I think that if this breaks, it's going to be like a kind of a flush in the market, to be quite honest. So, it's possible. I just don't think it would be as likely. I think the markets would flush more likely than they would necessarily just fake out. So if you're wanting to play a fake out scenario, then like that would make sense, right? Maybe you come down here, you get like a piercing candle, and then it goes back up. But I think that that's kind of like playing against the odds, and it's not something that I would do. Now I can't tell you what to do, but that's not something I would do. I've learned my lesson about playing against the odds. So, I want to take a look at the Ethereum chart real fast because I just haven't looked at it in too long. I don't know if you guys saw, but the market's open today, traditionals, commodities, indexes, precious metals, things like that. And they dumped. Oil dumped, S&P dumped, NASDAQ dumped. Gold absolutely took a rip towards the upside. This actually isn't very good for Ethereum. Immediately, though, the first thing I see over here is this guy. And, well, this might not be as bad as I thought. That's so bad. I wonder if I would... That might be better. We'll keep that there. We'll keep that there. So if you're kind of betting off of... If you like falling wedges, then this could be your argument that it's extremely, bullish, right? It's at the best possible buying opportunities right now if you want this to be a falling wedge. Now, the resistance on this, it's a sloppy falling wedge, and I'll give it that. Because looking at this, the support sloppy, you have piercing candles in here. The resistance is extremely steep with a large gap in between it, right? You have the initial touch point, and then you have the final touch points, which are all bunched together. So what people might actually do is just say, screw that, and then we can clean up this guy just a little bit, and then just say that this is a smaller scale falling wedge. That might be the move, actually. I like that more. I think that looks a little bit more clean than like the large scale. What do the indicators look like on this? Because this actually could be pretty decent. MACD doesn't say anything. All right, I actually like the way that this is looking. Initial swing low all the way down around the point of 15.8. Next one is at 17.4. Next one is at 24, pretty flat, about 24 flat. So, in the same sense, though, you are seeing the exact opposite playing out. And you can see the kind of like this squeeze in the relative strength index, more so towards the downside than to the upside. I mean, this is way more of a range than the downside is. But kind of the same concept happening over in here, right? Right here, and then here, and then here, and then now here. But I would say, I guess, honestly, in the short term, Ethereum has potential towards the upside. Like this is probably the first decent chance it has at retesting this overbought territory that it's had in like a month. Right? The last time it tested this area was at the beginning of August, and I think that it's very possible that I would say by like mid-September it could touch this level. Mid to late, maybe. That's just my opinion on it, though, from the RSI. Again, RSI should not be treated as a candle chart, in my opinion, but there's definitely a potential bullish argument. Now, there's also a potentially very bearish argument for this as well. I mean, again, there's two sides to everything. It's technical analysis. But that being that, this support over here, I think I deleted that. This support over here on Bitcoin that was very well established was broken, right? The number one support line over here, the secondary support line being the blue one, was broken, and then let's zoom this up just a little bit more. And then over here on the primary was broken just as easily. You have over here your first touch point, your second touch point. You bounced off of here again, a couple times actually in here. And then as soon as this broke, it was a major dump. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, is that like when these long-term historic large trend lines break, it's usually not just for $100 or $200. When this guy broke over here, let's like take a look at this. All right, again, very nice bounce off of here, very nice bounce off of here. Again, more bounces over in here. And then when this guy actually broke, Ethereum went from $187 all the way down to $164, which is, about a $20 move, about a little over $20 move. for Ethereum towards the downside. So when this guy broke, it wasn't just like, oh, you know, we lost a couple of dollars, you know, to the Ethereum pairing. You know, that's a nice little chunk of money. And that's all coming from 1 4-hour candle, you know, 1 to 2 4-hour candles over in here. So about a 1 day just like move towards the downside. So the fact that all the supports have broken, all the trend line supports going upward have broken for Ethereum, makes me think that the macro trend could very well be coming down. I would go so much as to say that if this falling wedge idea doesn't play out for Ethereum, it's going to be entering into like a bad cycle. Now, if it can hold in here, it would be ideal. It really, honestly, Ethereum needs to hold in here. This is former resistance turn support, right? Up in here. This is now support for Ethereum. You know, 1, 2, 3 rejections. Now, if we line this up, this is now support. I mean, we can kind of just like draw across and see. It needs to hold this area. This is an important range saying that it has broken above this and it's going to hold above this. If it's broke above this and came back down and got back below in here, you would, you know, ideally I'm looking for a new low on Ethereum. So like that would then become a possibility. But until that area, you know, as long as it holds this, and you know, if this breaks out from here, I think Ethereum is going to be pretty bullish. You could be looking at a potential golden cross on the 4-hour. And let's talk about that because like these guys have been so active. This death cross happened over here exactly on about July 14th. Ever since this death cross happened, like imagine if you just had a trading bot and this death cross happened on the 4-hour and it just took you right out. Like you'd be taken out somewhere in here, right? Somewhere around 264 bucks. So like ever since this death cross, this has been saying that the death cross happened. This is now in a bearish trend, and you know it very obviously has been. Back to Bitcoin, to the US dollar. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. This is the wrong chart. If you guys have any questions, by all means ask. I'd love to be able to answer them. I am going to be wrapping up Bitcoin in here and placing like my final thoughts and everything along that area. But my final thoughts for this my final thoughts really are, let me rephrase that and kind of zoom this in so that you guys can see this chart a little bit better. My final thoughts are in here is that one, you know, it's going to be testing these EMAs. We already see it doing it. In my honest opinion, I think that this is a bear flag scenario. It's a very clear rising channel coming from a breakdown, which to me is evidence that this is a bear flag. However, it is seeing a nice little bounce off of support. So it's bouncing off of support, which means that it's either going to see rejection from these EMAs and break down, or it's going to want to retest upper overbearing resistance before seeing, you know, more rejection. I do ultimately see this breaking down and then having a big breakout afterwards. Everyone knows that is my theory on Bitcoin right here in the macro. It's hard to predict the macro trends and stuff of like what's going to happen months and months in advance. But, you know, I just see this as the most likely scenario, being that this descending triangle is here and support is going to start getting exhausted. So eventually, whether that rejection comes from right somewhere around this like almost 10K range, right below that 10K range right in here, whether that comes from the EMAs or whether that comes from overbearing resistance, you know, I do see a rejection coming for Bitcoin. So that is pretty much summing up, I guess, my thoughts on Bitcoin, guys. Thank you guys for tuning into the live stream. If you guys have any questions, be sure to shoot those my way, you know, on just the live chat or through Discord or email or whatever that may be. And I'd love to be able to help you guys out. I'm going to stick around for a couple more minutes answering your guys' questions, and I guess we can move on from there. So thank you guys all for watching. The bulk of this live stream is over, and I'm just going to be answering whatever questions that you guys have, I guess, moving forward. Gotta stay hydrated. Oops. Also, guys, I forgot to announce this. If you guys are new here, hit that like button. Helps out the channel a lot. And we do this live stream every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to be a regular watcher, don't forget to tune in every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Chauncey said, how often do you trade Ethereum? I don't. Okay, so here's the deal. I actually used to trade Ethereum, made some good money off it, honestly, leverage trading. I don't have any money in a leverage trading account anymore. There were some like hard regulation articles that I posted about like a month or two ago that made me nervous enough to withdraw all my funds from leveraged exchanges. And so since I don't have any funds on leveraged exchanges anymore, I don't trade cryptocurrency. Right now, I've been focused on trading indexes, commodities, and precious metals. So like oil, S&P 500, it's called ES, NASDAQ, gold, things like that. I've been focused more on just because of what was happening to those exchanges or companies or whatever you want to call them. Those leveraged exchanges were under so much fire, and like the last thing I wanted to do is get caught as a U.S. citizen and then have all of my Bitcoin on those exchanges seized. So I moved all my funds off for now. I'll probably get back into it, honestly, because it's enjoyable. But for a while, I definitely trade more Bitcoin than anything. And then I would say it was like, here, I have a log chart, actually. I have a Google Sheet stock. Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong email. Hold on. Here was, I hope I can show this. I don't like... Here was all my trades. God, that's bright. Here were all my trades. So I was doing Bitcoin, Litecoin. I don't have any of my Ethereum trades on here. Dang. So this is when I started keeping track. In January, though, I was definitely trading some Ethereum. I guess I don't. I feel like Ethereum's so close to Bitcoin, or for a while, during this time period, it was like you could trade them both because they were moving so similarly. Ethereum was just so much more volatile that it made me nervous. So I went Bitcoin, Litecoin, Cardano, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. So I guess I didn't trade. I guess I didn't this year trade nearly as much as I used to, for Ethereum at least. Trade on Kraken. I trade mostly Ethereum. Ethereum has been trending down, easier to trade in my opinion. Yeah, honestly. So I have questions. I've never used Kraken. I don't even think I have a Kraken account unless I created it like a couple of years ago and forgot about it. With Kraken, like what are the regulations and stuff? I get nervous because for BitMEX and Deribit and a lot of those guys, like they weren't reporting your trade activity to the government. So I'm nervous as to how leveraged regulated trading within the US would be treated because it's so frowned upon. Especially for cryptocurrency. Because I've never really heard, I haven't heard of many traders that reported their leveraged cryptocurrency funds and gains. So that's my question, is like, how does that work for Kraken? It's regulated, but it's legal. Yeah, so like I know it's legal. I guess they only offer up to 5x, right? Which is fine. 5x is max. I'm fine with that. I went 10x on like almost all those trades. Let's pull it back up. Can I pull that back up? I think most of my trades were like, oh, here we have a 5x, 5x, 10x, 10x, 5x, 25x, 25x, 5x, 10x, 10x. So like I'm still like I don't know. Like it's obviously legal, and don't get me wrong, like I understand that. I just I have so many questions about it. Like how it would work within the US. Like how do you report taxes on that? How do they report taxes on that? Because if it's legal and regulated, then they're reporting your trade history, or they can report your trade history, but you're probably required to independently. I just have so many questions about it. Not that I'm opposed to it. I'll honestly look into it and move over. I know Poker Throat does it, so I might just shoot him some messages and see what he says, because he would probably know more. He's kind of like the Kraken master. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm going to get some other things done, but I will be coming out with most likely a video tomorrow. I don't think that they are required to report, but you are. And that's the thing, is that like if you don't report, then they will report. You know what I'm saying? So like if since they are regulated and thus legalized, if you don't report, then the US government is like affiliated with them to like get your documents, get your information and such. Not that that's a bad thing, because like you have to pay taxes, right? I'm just like so curious about like the whole process, because like I've never paid cryptocurrency tax before, and I've owned it for multiple years. So I'm still very much intrigued by the whole cryptocurrency tax process. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy that video, hit that like button. It helps out the channel a lot. But I will be having a video most likely come out either tomorrow or Tuesday, and then an additional video covering the course and all that stuff, because, you know, it's about time I actually announced that, because it's been out and I totally forgot to announce it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys very soon. If you guys have any questions, be sure to shoot those my way, and then I would love to be able to answer them. All right, thanks, guys.